Morning. Um, I welcome you at the very last uh, webinar from the series offered by the delegation of the European Union to Canada. My name is Agnieszka Wejnar. I'm the team leader of the EU-Canada Policy Dialogue Support Facility, and I will be your moderator today. But before we start, please welcome Her Excellency Ambassador of the European Union to Canada, Madame Geneviève Trutz, who will give opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Agnieszka, and good morning to all in Canada and good afternoon in Europe. So it is with great pleasure that I open today the webinar on Cluster 3 of Horizon Europe dedicated to civil security for society. This is a cross-cutting cluster that ranges from producing research results to save lives of natural disaster or to technologies that protect citizens from criminal activities in the cyber world. So today's webinar is the last one of the series that our delegation has initiated since January 2025 in order to help Canadian researchers and innovators understand better Horizon Europe procedures and opportunities. So I'm extremely proud of the work that has been achieved so far. Since the beginning of my mandate in September 2024, I felt the Canadian stakeholders' enthusiasm and commitment to reap the full benefits of association to Pillar 2 of Horizon Europe. And our delegation could not stay aside from this collective endeavor. We wanted to contribute to turning this new chapter of EU and Canada cooperation into success. So allow me to thank warmly all the speakers and experts who shared with us their experience, their expertise throughout the webinars. We have had among us a great number of researchers and professors from various universities and research centers across Canada, as well as government stakeholders, EU member states, and I think from other associated countries to Horizon Europe. I would like to thank particularly the science team and the colleagues from the EU-Canada Policy Dialogue Support Facility, the so-called PDSF. This is a dedicated instrument for supporting cooperation and outreach research and activities on the ground. These actions would not be possible without you. Obviously, the most important measure of success has been the number of participation. In some of the webinars, we had more than 500 registrants. Our webinars amplified the impact of the Horizon Europe Roadshow throughout Canada, organized by the Canadian Ministry for Innovation, Science and Economic Development, ICET, and the Directorate General Research and Innovation of the EU Commission last March with the support of our delegation. And I would like to underline that throughout all the Horizon Europe activities, the EU and our Canadian friends from ICET worked hand in hand as one team. And the best is yet to come. Last webinars does not mean the final one. We will continue our outreach activities. And we are currently reflecting on the new series of outreach activities starting from September. The new webinars will focus on Horizon Europe 2025 work program, and they could cover also other opportunities for collaborative research. So I would like to say, to conclude, that through science and innovation, the EU and Canada can together achieve better economic and social breakthroughs. And now, without further delay, I would like to give the floor to our national contact point from Italy, Flavia Lacolla. Madame Lacolla, vous avez la parole, on vous écoute et merci d'être avec nous ce matin, cet après-midi.
I just wanted to say that before we start, I need to give some rules of behavior. So, dear participants, as usual at these webinars, you are welcome to ask the questions in the Q&As, and we will be answering them as we go. So do not hold back when you listen to the presentations. Please ask immediately, do not wait. And our experts will do their best to answer all the questions immediately in the Q&As. As regards Flavia, who is with us, I just wanted to underline that she's not only the national contact point for Italy, but she's also responsible for the whole network of Cluster 3, the national contact points in Europe. And she's an expert on the gender dimension in Horizon Europe. So you can also ask her about this. So Flavia, thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much, and thank you, apart from the introduction and the kind words, also for the invitation to be here. It's a pleasure for me. I'm going to share my screen in a second. I hope you can see the presentation. Okay, so my presence here has the objective to show you how to take the first steps into the Horizon Europe environment, let's say, and specifically into Cluster 3 of Horizon Europe. As already said, the Cluster 3 is about civil security for society. It's a complex cluster. You can imagine, since the context in which we live nowadays, it's a crucial cluster, but we will see the main characteristics of the cluster, and I will give you some advices on how to approach the cluster in a few minutes. We will talk about these aspects together. So this is the main points I will address with you. Again, you can use the chat to ask me questions, and I will reply with no issues. So I will start with an introduction, a brief introduction on the Cluster 3 and how we have now the Cluster 3 as it is, so the context and the policies. Then I will give you some input, some guidelines on how to approach Cluster 3 and specifically identification of a topic that can be suitable for you. So how to take these first steps into this new world, let's say. And I will close my presentation with some general advices on this topic. So let's start with this generic slide, very common slide that we in general use to present Horizon Europe. So this is the structure of the program. As you probably know, Horizon Europe is the framework program of the European Commission, aimed to finance, so to give fundings to research innovation actions. We have basically three pillars composing Horizon Europe. The first one is the excellent science one. We have in this pillar all the actions dedicated to researchers and to research infrastructures. The second one, where the Cluster 3 is, you can see here, is about the global challenges that the European Commission has identified to be addressed as a top priority for, again, the European Commission. Then we have the third pillar dedicated to let's say, the industrial part of the innovation world, let's say. So the European Innovation Council, the European Innovation Ecosystem, and so on. So this part is dedicated to mainly the companies and to products that are closer to the market. But we are here in Pillar 2. So Pillar 2 is divided in clusters. So we have different clusters, 6 to be precise, 6 clusters, one dedicated to health, one dedicated to the culture, creativity, and inclusive society. The cluster dedicated to digital industry space, the cluster dedicated to energy, climate, and mobility, and then we have the cluster about the food, bioeconomy, agriculture, etc. But we are here now to talk about civil security for society. Before going on, I would like to give you some input about the policy framework. I will give you more information about Cluster 3 in few moments, but I would like to stress the importance of reading the policies, because the policies are the basis of Horizon Europe, so the basis for each topic, each call that you can see nowadays under Horizon Europe. The Cluster 3 policy framework indeed is based on these main policies developed during the years by the European Union and the European Commission. One of the most important policy here is the Security Union strategy. Indeed, I have a dedicated slide on this. As you can see, this strategy launched for the first time in 2020, is divided into 4 pillars, let's say, and these pillars are reflected in some way into the work program of Cluster 3 that we can see, that we will see in a few minutes together. The major objective of this strategy is to make the European Union a safer place for the European citizens, and as a cascading effect also for a safe international scenario, let's say. So it's based on actions for the critical infrastructure protection, some actions based for the protection of the cyberspace, to fight against the cybercrime, and so on and so forth. So the final aim is to make the European Union a safe place for the European citizens. Another important policy developed by the European Union is the new Pact on Migration and Asylum. As you know, for the European Union, the migration, but not only for the European Union, the migration is a really urgent issue to be taken into account and to be addressed. So this is the reason why we have this policy, and we have also many topics or many focus, not only in Cluster 3 but also in Cluster 2, focused on this issue, so the migration. The policy is in general aimed to structure a methodology to manage the Schengen and the external borders of the European Union, to improve the skills and talents of migrants coming in Europe, and to improve the flexibility and resilience in Europe on the migration issue. When we talk about policy, another step we can take into this discussion is to talk about the strategic plan of Horizon Europe. What is that strategic plan? Is basically a document. In this case, we have the strategic plan covering the last 3 years of Horizon Europe, so 2025-2027. It's a strategic document used by the European Commission to indicate which impacts they would like to see through the implementation of Horizon Europe. They found projects. So they fund research activities, research innovation activities. Okay, so we have the European project, but behind the project, behind the topic, behind the course, and so on and so forth, we have this document. So as I will highlight at the end of my presentation, the very first step I would like to suggest you to take is to carefully read the Horizon Europe strategic plan if you would like to really understand the reasons behind the work programs, the course, and the topics under Horizon Europe. The document is divided into different sections, one section per cluster, as you can imagine, and one section per pillar of Horizon Europe. For each cluster, the objective of the European Commission are listed, so you can understand the rationale under the European Commission's request contained within the work programs. In this slide, you can see the key strategic orientations that are, let's say, horizontal for each clusters. The green transition, the digital transition, and the objective to achieve a more resilient, competitive, inclusive, and democratic Europe. These are the main key strategic orientations, but we have also, let's say, subcategories of impact that are tailored for each cluster. The main objective behind the Horizon Europe program is for sure to achieve a Europe leading role in develop and deploying critical technologies, so to have an open strategic autonomy. So this is the reason why I put this slide for you here. In this slide, on the other side, you can see the expected impact, so what the European Commission would like to see into the project, or as a result, let's say, of the projects in the long term, specifically to cluster 3. So if you read the strategic plan of cluster 3, you will see these 4 points. So reducing losses from natural, accidental, and human-made disasters, facilitating the movement of passengers and goods into the European Union, while preventing illicit acts. Then we have the part related to the fight against crime and terrorism and the resilience of critical infrastructure. And then we have the part related to the cybersecurity aspect. You will see in few moments that each of these points are related to a destination into cluster 3. We will see together the word, the destination, and its meaning. I put this slide here to show you the link between the expected impact that you can see, that you can find into the strategic plan of Horizon Europe in relation to the intervention areas covered by the cluster 3 work program. But I will come back to this point here in this slide. I know that this part, especially if you come for the first time to this word, can be difficult to be understood. Indeed, if you have questions, you can use the chat again. I would like to stress this point because, again, I imagine that it can be tricky for the first time to enter deep into the this environment, let's say. This slide is aimed to explain the process that from the legal basis, so from the establishment of Horizon Europe, leads to the expected results. So at the very end of this slide, the expected results, so the outcomes of each project. So we have the legal basis, so the regulation established Horizon Europe. Then we have the structure of Horizon Europe in pillars, clusters, as I already said. We have the intervention areas that I show you in this slide. So for the case of cluster 3, we have the disaster resilient societies, the protection and security, the cybersecurity, etc. We have then the strategic plan, the document I already show you. The document is strictly related to the EU political priorities and the key strategic orientations that I already talked about. Then we have the expected impacts. The expected impacts are the results, the objective that the European Commission would like to see in the long term. So in 10, 15 years after the end of Horizon Europe. Okay, so the long-term results, let's say. Then we have the work program, so the list, basically the document listing the funding opportunities. Each work program is divided into destinations that are micro areas of intervention. Each destination has a list of topics. I will show you the document in a few moments. And then each topic will finance 1, 2, 3 projects, and each project will have the results, the output of the research activities, and these are the expected results. So just to highlight that the expected impact that we can find into the strategic plan are reflected into the destination into each cluster. So I hope to be clear on this part, because it's important to, again, understand the rationale behind Horizon Europe and Cluster 3 in this case. So going into the details and the main characteristics of Cluster 3, I would like to say one, let's say, introductive sentence, let's say, because Cluster 3 is only about civil security. So we don't talk about defense in any case. Horizon Europe and Cluster 3 are only dedicated to civil security. And when I talk about security, is security under different aspects. I will show you a dedicated slide on this, so with the different destination, with the different areas of Cluster 3, but I would like to also give you this introduction and this specification, let's say, because security is a huge concept, and I would like to be clear on this side, but I will come back on this point later on. So Cluster 3, as other clusters in Horizon Europe, are challenge-driven, and they have a bottom-up approach. So is the European Commission, in this case, in Cluster 3, is DG Home, the Directorate General responsible for Cluster 3, that says to us, says to the researchers, the company, etc., what the European Commission is expecting. They elaborate the topics, the course of fundings, with the final aim of addressing a challenge. So this is the reason why it's a challenge-driven approach. It's based on the society's needs, the practitioners' needs, and the relevant entities' necessities. And this approach is, yes, clearly stated into the expected impacts. I will show you later on the expected impacts. The particularity, the peculiarities of Cluster 3 is the mandatory requirements to have involved into the project the so-called practitioners. Practitioners can be identified as people skilled in a specific field of activity. The major example of practitioner are the law enforcement agencies, so the police authorities, but not only them are considered practitioners. Practitioners are also the broadcast, the board authorities, the firefighters. So it depends on the type of topics we are talking about. The practitioners can be also the infrastructures, such as the airports or the ports or hospitals. So this concept that you will find into Cluster 3 work program can change when we talk about the FCT topic or DRS and so on and so forth. But for the majority of Cluster 3 funding opportunities, you have the mandatory requirement to involve a practitioner into your project as a full beneficiary, so as a full partner. Why? Because having them on board means that the novelties, the technologies you are developing are tested by the end users, because practitioners are the end users of the technologies developed in Cluster 3. Cluster 3 is also committed to have a strong involvement of civil society. If you will read the work program of Cluster 3, you will see that many topics requires the direct involvement of civil society, so they can be part of the consortium as a beneficiary, or they can be target group, so with the aim to disseminate the project results. Just as a general information to you, because you need to be aware of this, the general eligibility conditions of Horizon Europe are the following. So this is the consortium composition for Research Innovation Action and Innovation Action. I will say some words about these acronyms in a few moments. Says that to be eligible to participate in Horizon Europe, the consortium must be composed by at least one independent legal entity established in a member state and at least two other independent legal entities established in a different member states or associated countries. So this is the general conditions to apply to Horizon Europe and also Cluster 3. Just a comment, it's very unusual to find so small consortium. So this is a minimal requirement, but in general consortium are even bigger than 3 partners. So we have consortium of 16, 20, 25 organizations inside a partnership. Cluster 3 is a particular cluster, again, because it has specific eligibility conditions. As already said, for the participation in Cluster 3 topics, you have a further eligibility condition, because you need to involve the practitioners inside your consortium as a full partner. And this is an obstacle in some cases, because it's not so easy to get them on board, to get them on time before the submission deadline. So my recommendation is always to start the consortium composition, the consortium creation, let's say, from the practitioners, because many times they are public bodies, and it's not so easy to involve them as we imagine. So this is my strong recommendation that I give always, both at national level to my Italian stakeholders, but also in my role as CEREN 5 coordinator. So we are here. This is the slide dedicated to describe you Cluster 3 of Horizon Europe. As already said, is divided into different destinations. With destinations, the European Commission mean areas of interventions, let's say. So different areas that compose the concept of security, and different areas aiming to reach the final objective of make the European Union a safe place for the citizens. So we have 6 destinations. The first one, the fighting crime and terrorism, is let's say, focused on creating and developing new technologies and innovations to improve the work of law enforcement agencies. They work in fighting crime and terrorism. we had in the past also some topics related to the hate speech, so fighting against the hate speech online and offline, or some topics about also the child sexual abuse. So it's a very comprehensive destination dedicated to different kind of crime. But the major aim is to support, to create new tools to support the work of law enforcement agencies, again, to fight the terrorism and different forms of crimes. Another destination, the border management, is dedicated to the surveillance of the European Union's borders, so the maritime borders, so the coastal, let's say, borders, the air management, so with the use of drones and so on and so forth. So even in this case, the role of border authorities, the border authorities, is crucial. So in many cases, you will see the mandatory requirement to involve border authorities into your project, because you will be asked to develop technologies for them. So they will need to be involved in each phase of the research cycle, let's say. We have also the destination dedicated to the resilience of infrastructure, of critical infrastructure. So as already said, we can consider resilient infrastructures, the ports, the airports, the hospitals, but also the food chain, the telecommunication, the gas pipeline, no? And so you can choose, especially if we have in front of an open topic, the infrastructure you prefer to work on. The most important thing is to create technologies and innovations that can improve the resilience of this infrastructure in front of man-made or natural accidents that can happen. On this point, so man-made or natural hazards that can happen, we have the other destination, the Disaster Resilient Society, so DRS, it's the code of this destination. This destination is aimed to improve the capacity of citizens, of people, of practitioners and the cities in responding to the natural disasters or to the man-made attacks. It's a very important destination, especially in the context where we live now, because now we have also a topic related to the war zones, so how citizens, our people can react, can be resilient in zones affected by war, actually. We have then a horizontal destination, the Strength and Security Research Innovation. This destination is aimed to support the research and innovation activities, because it's aimed to basically support the work of the industry part. So in this destination, the role of small and medium-sized enterprise is crucial. This destination will support the market uptake of the results developed in Cluster 3, for instance. Then we have the last destination dedicated to the cybersecurity. As you know, the artificial intelligence, but also the post-quantum cryptography, are crucial nowadays, and these destinations is aimed to provide some financial support to the development of these new technologies, of these new tools, and especially to make the European Union a leader in the cybersecurity sector. So going into the details of the work program, let's say, I will show you in the next slide that the work program is composed by the destination, no? As already said, we have these 6 destinations. Each destination is composed by topics, so list of funding opportunities. Each topic is composed by these 3 elements. So the title, that show you the main outcomes covered by the topic itself. Then we have the expected outcomes, and then we have the scope. The expected outcomes briefly give you the measure of what the European Commission is expecting from your research activities. In general, we have the expected outcome listed with points of activities, and in principle, if you would like to succeed, you have to reply to each of, or the majority of the requests made by the European Commission into the expected outcomes section. Then we have the scope, aimed to describe the area of research and innovation that needs to be taken into account to reach the expected outcome. So this is the relation between expected outcomes and scope. So if you have not yet the chance to see our program, this is how it appears. I show you in this slide the 2023 topic, one of the 2023 topic in FCT. So the destination is the fight against crime and terrorism. As you can see, there is the topic title, as already said. In this case, we have new methods and technologies in service of community policing and transferable best practices. You will see in each work Horizon Europe work program the same structure. So you have, after the title, this table summarizing the specific conditions of the topic, and then we have the topic description. In this case, we have, as already said, the expected outcome and the scope. The expected outcome listed, and you can choose if you would like to contribute to some of or all the outcomes. So in this case, just to be concrete, the European Commission asked for a strengthened resilience of local communities against crime and radicalizations. Negative factors in local communities are identified. So you have to identify, because it's a past topic, identify negative factors in local communities. A better recognition for community diversity within the neighbors, and so on and so forth. So this is the request of the European Commission in terms or in relation to this topic. Then we have the scope. So the context where you should work and the activities you should perform in order to achieve the expected outcomes through the work of your project. One of the most important advice that I would like to give to you is to carefully read this table that you can find again under the title of the topic. In this slide, you can see the topic code again with the title, the expected EU contribution per project, so the amount of money that the European Commission will allocate for project, the indicative budget of the topic that can be different. In this case, we had one proposal funded, but it can vary from one topic to another. Then we have the type of action. I will come back on this point in a few minutes. Then we have the eligibility conditions that are really specific to each topic. In this case, the request is to have at least 3 policy authorities involved into the project from at least 3 different EU member states or associated countries. So this is a specific eligibility conditions related to this specific topic. So it can change from one topic to another. In other kind of destinations, you will see in this table, for example, this topic requires the active involvement as beneficiaries of at least 2 civil society organization or civil protection organization. So it can change on the basis of the topic you are interested in. Then we have the technology readiness level. So the TRL, the European Commission is expecting to that you will reach working on your project at the end of it. So in this case, the European Commission would like to see your achievement of TRL 6 to 7 by the end of the project. And then we have the specification about the security sensitive topics. So the European Commission recommends to treat carefully the classified information that your project may use or have as a result. I talk about different times about RIA, EA, CSA. You will find here, no, in the table, the type of action. In this case, we have the research innovation action. So this topic is labeled as RIA. The research innovation action give you, or the type of action, let's say, give you the guide on how to approach the topic, because each type of action is related to a level of TRL, level of research you can achieve. So the research innovation action has the funding rate of 100% and is aimed to establish new knowledge or explore the feasibility of a new or improved technology. Is a research as a basic level, let's say. The innovation actions can be funded with 70% for profit organizations, 100% for public and non-profit organizations. Innovation actions are aimed to produce plans, arrangements, methodologies, or designs for new or improved products, processes, or services. So it's a step forward in terms of research in respect to the research innovation action. Lastly, we have the CSA, so the coordination and support action, funded with 100%. They finance basically support activities to the research innovation classic activities. So they are aimed to contribute to the general objectives of Horizon Europe program, but these actions are not dedicated strictly to research innovation. As already said, I'm also a trainer in Italy for the gender dimension in the research innovation and specifically in Horizon Europe. Why we have this, let's say, series of trainings in Italy, or even the European Commission has trainings on gender, because the gender dimension is mandatory to be addressed in Horizon Europe. These requirements is stated into the regulation establishing Horizon Europe. So it is mandatory for each research activities to take into account the gender dimension in the research innovation in Horizon Europe again. The only case in which you are fine if you don't consider the gender dimension is only when you explicitly read within the topic text that the topic cannot consider the gender dimension. But if you don't see these sentences into the topic description, you have to mandatory consider the gender dimensions. So to take into account the gender analysis into your research innovation project. We have another horizontal aspect, let's say, the social sciences and the humanities aspect, so this SSH integration within the Horizon Europe program. This is something that is horizontal again in Horizon Europe. Within Cluster 3, we have a great importance of this integration. This is the reason why you can see at the end of the topic description in many topics, the explicit request of the European Commission to integrate the social science and humanities skills and competencies within your consortium. So applicants in many cases have to show the roles of these disciplines into their projects. Otherwise, you risk to have a lower evaluation score at the end of the evaluation procedure. Another and the last horizontal aspect to be taken into account in Cluster 3, but in general in Horizon Europe, is the international cooperation. With international cooperation, we mean the cooperation with third countries, so not the member state nor the associated countries, but the third countries, so just such as the United States as the major example, but also India, China, South Korea, and so on and so forth. The international cooperation is crucial to achieve the right balance between the necessity to protect the information of the European Union on one side, on the other side to achieve better results thanks to the cooperation with external partners. For instance, in the field of the disaster resilient society destination, in many cases, the collaboration with countries such as Japan or China is strongly recommended because they usually are able to deal with natural disasters. So just as an example. So I would like to wrap up and to close my presentation. I know that I give you a lot of information, but I hope to give you now some tips, some concrete advices on your first steps into Cluster 3. So when you would like to work in Horizon Europe, my strong recommendation is to read the Cluster 3 main policies. I show you some of them at the beginning of my presentation. So please read carefully the policies because they can have a huge impact on your work, and they also help you to understand the words of the European Commission inside the topic description. Then you should read carefully also the Horizon Europe General Annex, just to understand how the program is working and what are the general requests of the program, and the description of the destinations. It's really, really, really important. Then you should assess your internal capacity to work into a proposal in Horizon Europe. This point brings me to say that if it's your first experience in Horizon Europe and in Cluster 3, my strong recommendation is to not take the coordination role because it's very challenging, especially for newcomers in this world. So my recommendation is to start as a partner, leading one task, or even just as a task contributors, so with a small role, just to understand the context, just to understand how Horizon Europe and the project in Horizon Europe works, because it's a very peculiar environment to work in. As a step forward, I put in this slide some other recommendations. One of the the recommendation I always give is to search for the assistance of the national contact points. You can search for your national contact points, but you can also ask to me and my partners in 75 to have an assistance in taking the first steps into Horizon Europe. Then for details, for a huge assistance, you should come back to your national contact point. But we are here for applicants because we are selected and nominated by the European Commission and our national ministries to do this job. So to assist, to support Cluster 3, in this case, applicants in applying in Horizon Europe. Another suggestion is to check carefully the admissibility and eligibility conditions, especially in Cluster 3, because as you have seen, we have a lot of specific eligibility conditions apart from the general ones. To read carefully the topic description, but carefully means word by word, because the European Commission wants to follow this bottom-up approach. So basically, you need to reply on each request of the European Commission, word by word. It's not the topic that should adapt to your research, but it's the contrary. It's your research that should adapt in some way to the request of the European Commission into the topic. It's very important. So the question you should ask to yourself is, will your proposal match the expectation of the topic? And this is important. Then you will properly fill in the proposal templates. Each template has the instructions, but if it's the first time, you need the guidance of a good coordinator or, again, the national contact points. My recommendation is also to choose your consortium based on your project needs. So not only on the basis of the contacts you already have, but being effective on what you need and which people you need into the consortium. Finally, but not for importance, let's say, clearly describe what you will achieve and how you will do it. I know that after my presentation, there will be another one on the proposal preparation, so I don't give you some details on this point, but the most important thing is to clearly describe the objective of your research idea. So I conclude my presentation. I leave you in this slide my contact. You can reach me, you can contact me for further questions. And thank you for your patience in hearing my presentation.
Thank you so much, Flavia. I have to tell you that you have already 2 questions in the chat, and they are pretty long to answer.
Yeah.
Let us know if at one point you would like to maybe answer them live at the end, if we have time, and if not, just try to write the answers. Okay, and now I will welcome Maria Pawłowska, who is our expert on Horizon Europe proposal writing. She's joining us from Nova Scotia, and she has a long experience in international research collaboration, and she will tell us today everything we need to know how to write a proposal. Maria, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Agi. Thank you so much, Flavia, as well, for that great introduction. I will be harking back to your words as I present my presentation. So let's get this started. I hope everyone can see the screen now. So this, as the title says, is a do's and don'ts, and I always start these presentations, and I always apologize to those of you who have seen this already, but this is these are the do's and don'ts. And Flavia has actually mentioned a lot of them, and I can just run through that and just repeat a little of what she said just because of how important it is. So align your research to the topic. Again, as Flavia has said, and I will probably say that a few times during this presentation, don't try to convince the commission you know what they want better than what they've told you they want. They know what they're asking for. It's your job to deliver on the call in your application. Give yourself plenty of time. It was really wonderful to speak to a whole bunch of Canadian stakeholders a while ago and hear that people are now very much aware that 3 months is too little time to prepare a Horizon Europe application. We're really going more for the 6 to 12 month mark. This is what we want to see. This is why the work programs are published earlier. This time, maybe there's a little bit less time than previously, but you really want to give yourself time, especially I'm speaking of the September calls here. Understand the EU evaluation criteria. They are very different to Tri-Councils. I can't stress this enough. This is a Horizon Europe application is very much not a Tri-Council application. And it's a whole almost different way of thinking about research funding and the role of research. Also because it's a very much a top-down directed program in Pillar 2. And you're answering specific questions or providing solutions for specific problems that the Commission has highlighted. So, you know, obviously, for example, good writing, that's always a transferable skill, right? But how you write and what you write about is going to be very different from a Tri-Council. And that's really important to keep almost top of your mind when you're thinking and working on these. And choose the right consortium. This is, I honestly, again, can't stress this enough. I have been getting signals from people in Canada that about how consortia are being built. And I think what's really important is to understand that you get assessed on how your consortium is built. We have the great pleasure of, on all these webinars, having an EU evaluator. There will be one speaking right after me, who's got incredible experience with these things and will tell you more about it. But it's you want a consortium every time that's custom built for the application you are putting in. So that's something to consider when being approached, especially by third parties about consortia building. These need to be every time built for the application that is being put together. So that's sort of the basic do's and don'ts. I'm very grateful to Flavia because she gave you a lot of the policy background that goes into building these applications. And again, they're very much top down and the policy side is very important. So I have direct quotes from the strategy that Flavia has talked to you about, some of which I won't go into any detail in because she's already showed them to you. But here is just a little rundown of how you want to approach the Horizon. You want to do a Horizon Europe, that's why you're here. And this is a little bit of a very basic workflow where you start at the funding and tenders portal, you look at the work program, and you really want to have and not just the one, even though we're talking about cluster 3 here, and this is what we're going to focus on. It's important to realize that even if you think your research only fits in cluster 3, taking a look at other work programs or even just the index of other work programs can be very useful for giving you an idea of whether there's anything else you could participate in. Choosing a call that you're interested in, that's going to be key. You really want to read that, as Flavia has said. Reading every single word and making sure you understand, including the sometimes we call it Brussels speak or Brussels English. Some words mean maybe something a little bit different than they would if you just use them in vernacular English. So we'll come back to that in a bit. Building and joining a consortium. This is partnership building in Horizon Europe is a very big thing. This is really what it's about. It's one of the goals to build these partnerships. And there are different ways of doing that. And it's important to think about that. There you have your NCPs, you have matchmaking events, which are wonderful opportunities. We will have a project during this webinar who will tell you about how they build their partnerships. There are many ways to do this, many recipes. It's important to think about this, have a strategy, give yourself time. You need to assign roles for a Horizon Europe project. Everyone, as Flavia has mentioned, there are tasks you can do, there are work packages, there's the coordinator, but there's also, it's very important to assign roles internally at your institution. Horizon Europe projects usually involve a lot more administrator work than maybe what Canadian institutions are usually used to, research institutions. A lot of these applications are coordinated and largely put together by administrators because of their scope and because they go beyond the research itself. We'll talk about those sections of the application in a sec, but it's not usually feasible to assume that researchers will have experience or the expertise required to write up the whole application. So you really, really want to become friendly with your wonderful research services team at your institution. They will, at this point, most likely have a person assigned to Horizon Europe. You want to make sure you build those relationships and you involve them in the application as soon as possible. Now, Flavia has really done this for me. I almost don't need to talk about this, but I wanted to give you this quote from the strategy document to just show you how closely the calls you're looking at are linked to what's happening in Europe and the world, and how it's very much an answer almost, or a call to action based on current events. So the war on Ukraine, for example, and this is literally a screenshot from Horizon Europe documents. This is not any sort of top secret information. The extent to which that has impacted those recent events, the way the current work program and strategies have been constructed. So what to look out for? I think cluster 3 might be a little tricky for all the reasons Flavia mentioned, but also because of it's maybe not the kind of research a researcher would be necessarily most familiar with in a lot of cases. There are also, if you're an innovator or entrepreneur in this space, then it's probably more familiar to you in terms of the different sort of red tape around this area in a way that is not present in other research domains. And if you just look at the documents, you might have some red flags coming up as a Canadian-based innovator researcher institution, because it does say that it's contributing to achieving and improving European open strategic autonomy, right? And you might be wondering, what does that mean for me as a Canadian? Or what's really important is that it will require practitioners' participation in projects whenever necessary. And practitioners are, for example, the police in this case, or rescue services. So again, not necessarily, or border services. So here, first responders, border and coast guard, custom authorities, critical infrastructure operators. So again, as a researcher, these might not be the people you normally work with. So we sometimes call cluster 3 the trickiest cluster, because it requires building relationships that perhaps you already have, but perhaps you don't yet. And it's a really good place to lean on partners, especially with that focus on European needs. But I will get to in a sec. I really hope this doesn't discourage you. And just wanted to highlight these things so that we talk through them. You're aware they're in that strategy document and that you know what they actually mean. There's a lot of social acceptability, legal and ethical questions, and it does state clearly they must be at the heart of European security research: ethics, respect for fundamental rights, including human rights, privacy, and protection of personal data, as well as responsible research. So there's the policy side of things, there's the war in Ukraine, and this is where kind of the European values side is built into the research document themselves. European citizens and companies should be owners of their own security, should be aware of risks, and should have control over how to deal with them. And again, there's this huge stress here on European, right? That's where all the heavy lifting is in terms of the content of these calls. However, what does that mean for you, right? If as a Canadian applicant. So it does state in the rest of the documents that under this destination, international cooperation will continue to be strongly encouraged given the value of cooperating internationally. This is for Disaster Resilient Society for Europe. For destinations relating to border management, the fight against crime and terrorism, etc., the international cooperation will be encouraged only where appropriate. However, having said all that, Canada is an associated country, so it's not considered an international partner. And again, this is straight from the documents themselves. Autonomy, security, participation in this topic is limited to legal entities established in member states and associated countries. So when you read about international collaboration in the context of this cluster, it's important that you realize that as a Canadian-based institution, you are not considered an international partner, you are an associated country. So those limitations do not apply. They will apply to other so-called third countries. In most clusters, as we've talked about in these webinars, it is possible, encouraged to, for example, have participation from partners in lower and middle income countries. This is not necessarily so widely the case in this cluster. The takeaway basically from all these slides for you here is that you needn't worry about all the international collaboration side of things. As an institution based in an associated country, you are more than welcome to apply. So in terms of this is some of the usual, so to speak, Horizon Europe matters. That this comes up with every call. It's very much also the case here. In terms of DEI, this is also very different, a big difference between Canadian applications and Horizon Europe. Gender is the only part of DEI that is being, the only facet, so to speak, that is being considered. So you can define gender as male, female, and non-binary, that there have been repeating questions on that. The non-binary is a recent introduction and it's been made. And the Horizon Europe and the European Commission is all about gender mainstreaming in research. The commissioner for research, the equivalent sort of a federal minister, has stressed how important this is to her. And the gender component is a strong part, as I'm sure Flavia could tell you way more about, of the Horizon Europe program. And it is assessed in the excellence part of the application. So how well you gender mainstream, include gender in every aspect of your application is part of the excellence criterion. There isn't a separate gender criterion or DEI criterion. The assumption coming from the Commission is if you're doing excellent research, that means you are incorporating gender in an effective way, and this is how we're going to look at it. You can't be doing excellent research if you're not thinking of the gender aspect of it. So this is the part where a lot of European institutions will actually have their gender experts come in and help with the Horizon Europe application for this, to ensure that gender is mainstreamed from the very beginning, from research design, that they want to know, for example, if you're studying populations of in terms of people moving borders or possible crimes, they want to know you're looking at the gender aspect of that from the very beginning. In terms of natural disaster prevention, that is very much a part of cluster 3. Are you looking at the different ways that different genders might be affected by a disaster, the different needs or the different possible complications, right? They want to see this from the very beginning. What's also important to note is that gender balance among researchers involved in projects will be taken into account for equally ranked proposals. So if you have, if there are proposals that have an equal number of points, which is honestly happens more often than not these days, then the one with the better gender balance is the one that it's going to be higher up in the final ranking that decides who gets the final award, right? So it's something to consider when you're putting together your team, to make sure that gender balance is there among the named researchers in your team. Next. Open science. Open science, according to the European Commission is defined much wider than it currently is in Canadian institutions, especially through the Tri-Council. The Tri-Councils are moving towards a requirement of no embargo and open access publishing. That has been a mainstay of Horizon Europe for a while now. There's also the requirement in general for data deposit in a way that doesn't yet exist in Canada, and also for fair data and metadata deposit, which again are not necessarily part of the Canadian requirements for in terms of large Tri-Council projects. So it's again built into the application. The comment here with cluster 3 is that, and I'm just going to quote, while retaining its essence of openness to international cooperation, the cluster will ensure the safeguarding of EU strategic assets, interests, autonomy, and security in critical areas, such as 5G, 6G, AI, quantum computing, chips, or space technologies. So in general, for example, if you're doing disaster management or prevention, chances are a lot of what you're doing will not be covered under the open science requirement. There might be some things that aren't, but in general, you will be required to publish open access and do data deposit. Data needs to be managed in a fair manner, irrespective of whether it's open or not. You have to have a data management plan that includes fair data. And there needs to be metadata needs to be published, and you need to be able to secure reproducibility. Horizon Europe, as part the Commission, as part of its open science mandate, also encourages cooperation with communities, and this is something that is also likely to feed into cluster 3 requirements. There's also the research security side of things. And I'm very pleased to be able to tell you this, that in terms of research security, chances are your institution has it covered already. Canadian formalized requirements in terms of research security go above and beyond what the EU Commission as such has formalized for research security. Research security is largely left to countries and institutions even to sort out for themselves. There are no formal requirements such as there are for open science. And Canadian institutions have been mandated to create research security protocols that are, you're probably fine. I mean, I haven't worked with a single Canadian research institution that hasn't been above and beyond fine in terms of what the EU would ask for. The one thing to kind of watch this space area is the EU AI Act that is being developed, and it might be something to look into as this situation develops. Also, this is likely in terms of research security and the confidential materials, this is likely to honestly not be an issue for you as a Canadian-based innovator or researcher, rather for your European-based partners. They will be the one tasked with ensuring that confidential EU information doesn't leave the EU and is treated appropriately. You likely will not be dealing with that. So that's just in terms of the good news I can pass on. Okay, to look at the application itself. We have, this is the part A, this is honestly the easy part. This almost self-populates with the information that you've put into the system on the tenders and funding portal. This is the part to look into for cluster 3, the artificial intelligence and the EU classified information. Again, you will likely not have to be the one dealing with EU classified information. However, that is something to look into. I'm just flagging it here for you to be aware of that. This is the budget. It's honestly, that's basically what there is to it. It's this one table. The big news for Canadians, there is no in-kind required of any sort. Personnel costs are covered. Everything is generally covered. However, I said everything is generally covered. We don't have a lot of time to go into the details of the budget because that could be, and it has been, ICET's organized webinars on this and they have lasted literal hours because that's how much time you need to go into the nitty gritty. However, especially looking into equipment. That is something you want to do with the finance officers at your institution. Honestly, this whole budget should be done with finance officers. This is not something researchers do. In my experience with EU projects, researchers say what they need, and then this goes to the admin team, the Horizon Europe, the project team, and they discuss the budgets with their counterparts at other partner institutions. It is just a table, but it can get complicated. There are, different needs, different institutional policies. Honestly, there's probably usually anything from 6 to a dozen or more institutions involved with, again, more, usually half a dozen or more countries. So you want someone on the job who knows how to talk finances with other people who talk finances, even though it's just this table. And to the technical description, it's divided into these 3 sections. The first one is excellence. That's the section we call the what. What is your vision? What do you want to achieve? And now the commission gives you page suggestions. Stick to yes, they're formally suggestions, unless you have a really, really, really good reason to go, above or less than, don't. This very much is part of the EU Commission knows what they want, and they tell you what they want, and you just deliver on what they've asked for. So they asked for 4 pages, and in those 4 pages, you need to write what is the vision in a way that is detailed enough to convince an expert, but also clear and concise enough to make sure that someone who is an expert in your general area, but not your very specific field, understands why this is important and understands why your approach is unique. And why are you the best person to deliver, the best team why do you have the best solution? That the team comes later. Why do you have the best solution to this specific problem that the EU Commission has pinpointed and put out a call? Because that's really what the work program is. It's, the 27 countries that are part of the EU coming together and listing the things that are the most important to them after, years of negotiation often, and saying, we need these issues addressed. And you come forward as researchers, innovators, and say, you wanted this addressed, this is how we'll address it for you. This is how we'll make your life easier with these solutions. And that is the excellence. And this is where also the research data management comes in, and the FAIR principles and how you're going to manage your data. Because effectively, as far as the Commission is thinking, a lot of the data production is being funded through this money. And it's taxpayer money, and they want to make sure that the data is being looked after in the best possible way, because that is almost, that's a big part of the value added of the work you're going to be doing. And they need to make sure it's being curated in a way that will mean it won't go, missing in somebody's proverbial desk drawer, right? So that's the data management very much comes in this part. This is, again, taken straight from Flavia has recommended you go look at the strategy documents. That is a great suggestion. I've taken bits of that specific to this cluster and put it in this presentation for you for easy access. But this is, if you want to go read the whole thing, please do. It's the full document. But just to give you an idea of what they're looking for exactly here. These are some examples. Next, the impact. Why does this need to happen, right? And why are you going to make sure, why is this the way to do it? So what are your project's pathways towards impact? And we'll see what impact is defined at. As Flavia has said, they tell you what they see as impact and what impacts they want to see. You don't have to do any guesswork. It's very transparent. And then the dissemination, exploitation, and communication. Now, especially the exploitation is something that doesn't always sound right to Canadian-based researchers, for example, right? Exploitation it sounds a little like, do we really want to be exploiting things? In this case, you do want to be exploiting the results of your research for the betterment of humanity. Effectively is how exploitation is understood here. Humanity as a whole, of course, specifically in the European context, but a lot of these problems, most of these problems are problems for the world, right? So it's that exploitation we're thinking of. It's the positive kind of exploitation. And it's the Commission is asking you, how are you going to make sure it reaches as many people as possible in the most useful ways? So here are, again, the impacts that the Commission has highlighted, including for this particular cluster, including an overview of the cross-cluster complementary. So how does what you're doing feed into, how do these impacts feed into, for example, health or climate or food? There's more of that. And the way it's written, the application, this again is taken, this is a screenshot, paste and copy from the application. The Commission is being very, again, clear with you. They've given you a table. This is the summary table from the application where they walk you through how they want you to write it up. They want the specific needs, the expected results, and then the measures. And they're giving you examples of what it can be, right? And for example, for dissemination, it can be towards the scientific community, but also going beyond that. And towards citizens, how are you going to exploit? And here's a great example of exploitation, patenting the algorithmic model, right? That's the kind of exploitation they want to see. Target groups, outcomes, impacts. The impacts you can lean on, the impacts they've already provided you. You want to feed into what they say they need, because this is why the call has been put out. And the way these, for example, outcomes, target groups are defined, it's all in there in the document, right? So again, very little guesswork required. It's in the application itself. Finally, we have the how, and this is the part where you also want researchers really participating. It's the what that the researchers do, and then the how. The why is often, honestly, largely compiled by people who are not researchers, active researchers themselves, because the dissemination, the exploitation, that is the tech transfer people, that is the knowledge transfer, that is the communications team. That's not necessarily the skill set of every researcher. The how is very important. It's also a place where your research team and your research services team will collaborate, because on the one hand, we have the list of work packages. That's something that needs to be done also in close collaboration with your partners. Because honestly, this is where researchers spend the most time discussing things, because they usually know what they want to do and why they want to do it. It's who's going to do what and which parts of it. So that's the work packages and their descriptions. They need to be well divided, and it needs to make sense, and they need to be in synergy with one another, and who does what is really important. Why have you picked that particular lab, that particular group? Why are they doing this? There has to be a really, really good reason for assigning the work packages. The deliverables and the milestones need to make sense, and there's a Goldilocks number for both of them. Not too much, not too little, and it needs to have a flow and make sense in the way you've designed your project. This is something you want to spend some time on. Risk assessment. If these are going to be high risk, high gain projects, if you don't find a lot of reasonable risks, you're not going to get funded, because they want to know you've thought this through and that it's exciting enough to be risky, but you've also come up with really good mitigation strategies. And person months, that's a very EU term. It's basically how much are you going to pay people and for how long do you need them on the project. That's also, this can take a lot of discussion between partners. So just be aware of that. Capacity of participants in consortium as a whole. This is 3 pages for you to convince your evaluators that you've put this team together with a lot of thought and you've assembled the best team for what they've asked. This is where you do it. You have 3 pages for that, which is honestly quite a lot concerning the length of this document, because they want to know that they're funding the best people for the job. So just to finish up in the last 30 seconds or so, how to get going. Talk to your colleagues in Europe and your friendly research administrators. If you have any connections in Europe, this is the time to email them and ask them if you're thinking of any EU projects. Can you collaborate with them? That Canada is an associated partner now, so you don't need any additional funding. You can just be part of a consortium. You might also, your institution might have strategic partnerships with countries, with institutions in associated countries or EU countries. This is a time to look into that. Read the work program, assemble an international and local team, really important. Let your research administrators and research services know you're thinking of this. Talk to them, keep them in the loop. Follow the guidelines. It's not a menu you pick from. The call, it's a recipe. You go point by point and you do all the things they ask for. Assume there's going to be plenty of iterations. If it's going to get funded, it needs to be worked on, and it's going to get time to get there. You know, the average success rate for Horizon Europe is under 20%. So it needs to be good, and they'll probably take time. Align your work packages with your milestones and deliverables, and don't assume the researchers are going to do all of it. Really, this needs people with skills and knowledge of your institution that often go beyond what a researcher has experience with. And finally, here are some resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. That was excellent as always. I hope that we learned a lot, and I know that we are late, but this is somewhat a tradition in our webinars. So now I will invite to the stage the Dr. Johannes Rath, who is a senior scientist at the University of Vienna, Austria, and who comes to us with years of experience in evaluating different projects in the different programs of the European Commission, specifically focused on the topic areas of Cluster 3. So, Johannes, the floor is yours.
First of all, thank you for having me here today, and to have this opportunity to talk to you about my experiences and also about the framework that is applied in the evaluation of research projects submitted in Horizon Europe. Maybe as the beginning, I want to say that I've been involved in these evaluations of the European Commission for a long time, and I've seen an evolution in this evaluation process towards a more structured approach. And I think I just want to echo many of the points that have been raised by my previous colleagues talking to you about. Make sure that you understand the process that you apply to, and that you understand how important it is to follow the structure that is provided. I just share the screen now. Thanks. So the title of my presentation is Understanding the Evaluation Process. And what I would like to talk to you today is about, first of all, the different stages of the evaluation process. And I mentioned before, it's a structured process, and it's a structured process, and there are also very well-defined criteria, which brings me to the second part of my presentation, where we'll talk about the criteria that are used and a little bit on how evaluators evaluate them. It's a little bit redundant to what Maria has presented to you before, because she talked about how to structure your proposal. Well, the evaluation process follows exactly the same process or the same parts of your proposal that you have defined. And she mentioned actually, and that's an important one, that there are some draft forms available for the different subparts of your proposal. Please use them. Please follow the instructions. It's also what the evaluators are tasked to prepare themselves in reading up on what exactly these various criteria and sub-criteria are about. And the last point, I want to share a few ideas that I've picked up over the years that I think are relevant and important. When we look into the process on how an evaluation unfolds, then there's steps before this actual process. One of them is, for example, how do you get the evaluators? The evaluators are usually researchers in the area, maybe many of them with previous experiences in EU-funded projects, and they are rostered, and the EU Commission will pick from this roster of experts. So when you submit your proposal to the Commission or through Portal, the first thing that is done in this process is a check of the admissibility and eligibility. And it was mentioned before that some of the eligibility criteria might be context-specific to the calls, and so it's important to read them thoroughly to make sure you meet all these eligibility criteria. And then there is an allocation of the proposals to the individual evaluators. Many of the proposals are complex, and evaluators are often very specific in their expertise. So you will get evaluators that are knowledgeable for some, very knowledgeable for some parts of your proposal, but maybe just have a less in-depth knowledge on other parts of your proposal. This first step is done by the European Commission officials or RIA officials. And the actual evaluation process where external reviewers come into play starts with this green circle here, with what is called the individual evaluation. In this individual evaluation, researchers or experts get assigned proposals. And this might differ. Some of the experts might get actually quite a lot of proposals to review within a short period of time. And I mention this because it becomes important that you present your information in a structured way so that the reviewers can catch it immediately. One maybe little tip is to structure it in visual ways that you can comprehend very quickly. Graphs, tables are very helpful for reviewers to understand key context of the proposal. So, for example, how your specific activities relate to specific topics that are important for the specific call. It's usually then that once you have access as a reviewer to the proposal, you get a certain period of time assigned where you do what is called your individual assessment. Usually, the Commission assigns one proposal to several experts, and at the minimum, there are 3 experts per proposal assigned. The idea is that, first of all, you put forward your individual assessment, but the Commission also has an interest in standardizing the outcomes and making sure that there is a consistent application of the assessment, or a consistent way on how it's approached. Therefore, the next step is then what's called a consensus group meeting, where the reviewers of a proposal meet and discuss and come up to what is called a consensus report. In the consensus report, maybe at the individual evaluation level already, you have scoring. So you have a scoring from 1 to 5 in this review process. And this depends on what is called shortcomings and weaknesses. So you get tasked to identify what are minor issues in the proposal, or what are major issues that actually would not be easily resolvable. These are called weaknesses. Depending on the weaknesses and shortcomings that individual reviewers identify, they come up with a score. So you have them on the individual report, but then the consensus report, where the 3 reviewers or more reviewers come together to discuss, is actually the most important step, because at this stage, the reviewers will discuss their points and their observations and come up with a consensus report. And the consensus report scores are usually very important in the main ranking of the proposal. The next step is what's called a panel review, and that's for the whole call, where a panel meets of experts to try to come up with a final scoring. And what you've heard before already, calls are usually oversubscribed significantly, and the funding rate is at the average 20%. So there needs to be a clear ranking of proposals, and the ranking usually takes into account the scores coming out of the consensus group meeting, but there might be issues about equally ranked scores because they have the same score, so the proposals are equally ranked, and then there needs to be a panel decision on how to rank this, how to make the final ranking. And one of the things that was mentioned already is that the gender balance can be an important thing in this final decision about the ranking of the proposal. Once this process is done, the independent expert role is finished and it goes back to the Commission, and the Commission then moves forward with the funding decision on the projects. So these are the different stages of the evaluation. When we look into the criteria that the evaluators evaluate, then you've also heard already from Maria some important points. In principle, it's always about excellence, impact, and quality and efficiency of the implementation. These are the three elements of it. I do, however, warn you to take these terms in their generic meaning, but to be sure that you understand exactly what the Commission wants you to address under excellence. And in the excellence criteria, there's two sub-points or two sub-criteria. One is the clarity and pertinence of the project's objectives and the extent to which the proposed work follows this, and also how ambitious it is and how it goes beyond the state of the art. The second one is more related to the soundness of the methodology and talks about underlying concepts, models, assumptions, interdisciplinary approaches, appropriate. Important also the gender dimension in research and innovation contents, the social science and humanities aspect. And this might not be what you are used when you do proposal reviews in other contexts, that you have to address these issues. So when we talk about the first part of the project, of the excellence criteria, the first subpart that relates to the project objectives, question here is, are your project objectives pertinent to the topic? And this brings me back to what Maria has said. Read the topic description of the call very thoroughly and make sure that what you want to do clearly aligns with this topic description. Very often this is done in a table format where the objectives of the research are put in context of the topic description of the call. The questions, are they measurable and verifiable? So that's also something that evaluators are very much tasked to look into, not just a descriptive approach, but into clear, measurable, and verifiable objectives. Are they realistically achievable? That has to do with your capacity to deliver the objectives, and can they be achieved by the approach that you take, but also within the time frame. Very often objectives or proposed objectives are over-optimistic, and that can be also a disadvantage to the project if they are too ambitious and therefore within the given time frame of the project not achievable. Is the proposed work ambitious and goes beyond the state of the art? The way this is addressed is usually by first describing the state of the art in this relevant area, and then clarifying how you will go beyond this current state of the art and how the research will go beyond. Again, table formats are often used in this context where you describe state of the art and then how you go beyond, or a paragraph on how state of the art looks like and how you go beyond. The issue about groundbreaking research is especially important in certain types of actions, especially in the RIA action, and how novel the concepts and applications are. And then the other thing, the maturity of the research and innovation activities is an issue, for example, that comes up in innovation actions very often, where actually the issue about how you go beyond the state of the art is more related to increasing technology readiness levels to higher levels through this through the execution of the project. When it comes to scientific methodology, question are they clear and sound, and that means are they actually clear in the sense that you work within clearly defined technological areas, and if you go beyond on the technology level, how you want to accomplish this. The interaction, because many of the calls require the interaction between different disciplines. And one of the things is also how these different disciplines were brought together in a comprehensive and coherent approach, and not just 3 different individual activities that are not interlinked and do not provide the integration that is requested. When it comes to the gender dimension, I want to say that the gender dimension in Horizon Europe was, especially also for the evaluators at the beginning, I think difficult to understand. It is about the integration of gender into your research. And that's more than just gender balance in your consortium. It is about integrating the gender dimension in your research questions. When you have, for example, I looked recently into projects with countermeasures, and the question is, are these countermeasures, for example, tested in different genders too, and not just in one gender? So it's integrating it into your research activity and not just a gender balance. The gender balance, as I mentioned before, might be important in doing the final ranking. So when your project would be ranked on the border between funding and non-funding, then the gender balance would be something that would break the tie and be in favor of you. The open science practices, there are mandatory open science practices, there are voluntary open science practices. I think what I've seen also in the Secure Societies call and in other calls that are secure sensitive is that there is, if you can justify why, for example, your deliverable or your outcome needs to be secured, and you can argue this is justifiable. The default setting is always for as much openness as possible. Data management, what is often very good to have and also requested in some areas, is a data management plan where you clearly define your data sets, whether, for example, there are personal data used or technical data, how you handle them, and how you manage them. That's something that's also an issue in the assessment. And the last one is the integration of social sciences and humanities. And again, as mentioned before, this can be an issue in the Secure Societies score. And it means an integration of partners with expertise in social sciences and humanities in your project. And again, it should be an integration, not just an additional work package that looks into something else or is not fully integrated in the process of the work. I think that's also what reviewers like to see, that there is an active integration of this social science and humanities dimension into your research. I think you have to keep this in mind when you talk about excellence, that the definition of excellence in European Commission projects is actually quite a complex definition. And again, reviewers are tasked explicitly in trainings at the beginning of every evaluation to go through this step by step. So you can have the best idea and you will get good grades, or you will have a high scoring on your idea part. But if you don't have included the other parts of the excellence criteria, you still might get lower grades, scores, and that will have an impact on the funding decision. The second part is called impact. And this part is important in the sense that you have, again, 2 sub-criteria, which I will address just in a second. One is more about the credibility of pathways to achieve expected outcomes. And I want to remind you again, the term outcome has a very specific meaning in Horizon Europe. So please familiarize yourself with this term outcome and what it means, because that's something you have to describe in your proposal. And it talks about scale and significance of the contributions to the project. And the second one is the sustainability and quality of measures to maximize the expected outcome and impacts. And impacts is another term. So you have outcome and impacts, and as mentioned before, two already. One is more the immediate follow-up. That's the outcome, and the long-term implications are related to what they call impacts in Horizon Europe. And what they want to see is how you have a dissemination, exploitation, and communication activities. Dissemination activities, communication activities is not the same. There's different types. An exploitation plan is also something different. But when we talk about pathways towards impact, it is about the contribution of the project towards the expected outcomes of the topic and the wider impacts. And are they credible? And the credibility of your outcomes and impacts is in showing clearly how it will benefit the society. I think it was mentioned before already that the secure societies is a bottom-up approach in a certain sense, that it's about end user and participation and supporting end users. You will have them in your consortium, and make sure that you get their requirements clear, because that will help you to define how you describe your outcomes and impacts and how they become credible. The inclusion of their ideas and their opinions is critical in convincing the reviewers that you have a credible approach, that at the end is not just a waste of money because you follow some academic ideas, but it has implications in the real environment. The other thing is also barriers identified. Legal barriers, for example. Sometimes you will see a legal assessment about certain restrictions, or you will find standardization ideas to ensure that there is a harmonized approach to it. And other risks to these barriers identified. And it was mentioned already before that risk mitigation measures are important to define. When it comes about when we talk about proposed pathways towards impact, the scale and significance is also an issue. And what reviewers like to see is that you have thought about what is the scale of your outcomes, or what is the scale of your outcome, what is the scale of your impact. And this refers, when it comes to scale, to the size, for example, of your target group, the size of your user group at the end that you have. What's the significance of your outcomes and impacts in resolving critical needs in society? Please address them in your proposal and describe them. Dissemination and exploitation, communication are part of the impact criteria in the assessment. And there are different ways how you can disseminate and exploit your outcomes, how you can protect the outcomes. If you, for example, the last point here, which is usually separately addressed, is an IP strategy. If you have intellectual property produced during your project, how you protect them, how you make clear that this exploitation is adequately taken into consideration. It's also important to define target groups of your dissemination or exploitation activities or communication activities, whether this is the scientific environment, whether this is end users or other important actors in the context of the topic description. The last point is about quality and efficiency of the implementation, and this addresses, for example, work plan, risk assessment, the appropriateness of efforts assigned to work packages, which very often is, to be honest, a difficult thing for reviewers to judge whether if it's not completely disproportionate, the assigned efforts are really appropriate. But also then the capacity and the role of the participants and the extent to which the consortium as a whole brings together the necessary expertise. When we look at the work plan, question here that the reviewers have to answer is the work plan of good quality and effective? The quality of the work plan is defined by many criteria that have to do with composition of the consortium, tasks that you identify, breakdown in well-structured work packages, and the effectiveness is actually assessed in whether it has a realistic chance in succeeding in providing the output that you foresee. What the Commission, and I mentioned this before already, likes to see is quantifiable information. So how can you monitor your progress that you make? How much, what's your technologically achievement that you want to get during a certain task, or what's your detection level or whatever, something like this that can be measured and monitored. Does it follow logical structure? And again, it brings me back to what I said before. The evaluators like to see graphs, tables. If you can present it in a BERF or Gantt chart, these are very welcome presentations that help to understand the logic structure of your work and how the work packages interact with each other, the timings of the work packages, the deliverables, the milestones, how they are timed during the execution of your work. Are resources allocated to the work packages in line with the objectives and deliverables? Yeah, it's about a general question. We looked at the resource table and the complications in defining resources. Some issues that might be looked at is, for example, how much subcontracting is going, and there's almost everything going into subcontracting. Then the question is, well, what is how this allocation of resources actually would justify the consortium composition. And finally, and that was mentioned also, critical risks. And I've seen different risk assessments and sometimes very long list of critical risks. And they can be specific to certain tasks that you have defined during your work, in your work program. So very specific, but they should also, some reviewers like to see comprehensive risks to the project that have to do with certain, sometimes also administrative or organizational issues or failures in the management of the consortium. So it's not just about technical risks in your execution, but sometimes also about managerial risks in executing your project. Last part, quality of participants and consortium as a whole. The question is, does the consortium match the project's objectives and brings together the disciplinary and interdisciplinary knowledge? That is judged based on your description of your institution and of the expertise of the key individuals participating in the research activity. And the next question, does partners have access to critical infrastructure? And this has to do with the operational capacity of an institution to really conduct what they are saying they will conduct in the project. So it's important to describe your methodological capacities, your equipment, that you have access to all these things. Another point is the complementary nature of the different partners, so that you don't want an overlap or too much overlap, but you want the different disciplines, the different expertises match the requirements outlined in your objectives that you have defined. The contribution of each of them, usually you will define by work packages, which institution contributes how many person months, which institution takes care of certain subtasks of a work package. All these needs to be defined to understand that everybody has an active role and a valid role in the project, and is also supported by the relevant resources. And in the case here, an evaluation criteria is also the participation of end users and or civil society organizations, for example, especially if it's already in the core text requirement outlined in this way. So when it comes to the question, how does the evaluation look in practice? Well, it's this process here. And I think what the Commission over the years has really invested in is trying to standardize the process to ensure that the process is fair and transparent, and that the people or the individuals who support the consortia who submit actually these proposals are treated fairly and get a fair chance to get funded. The end, a few personal observations that I've made over the last years or many years. And it was mentioned already in other presentations. I think if you're new to Horizon Europe, please try to join a consortium with experience in applying for Horizon Europe projects. It's a complex process. It is a lot of interaction. And it was mentioned that, for example, the coordinator role is an especially challenging role and time-consuming and role. So if you are interested, go to these matchmaking events where you can discuss with your expertise. You can try to find consortia that are trying to get established, and try to get on such consortium. It's really helpful, and it helps you to get a first step into Horizon Europe. Another thing I think that was also mentioned is that the terminology and concepts used in Horizon Europe, and we heard a lot already, are specific to Horizon Europe. They are not intuitively understandable. You need to read the definition behind it to understand what is meant and what is expected to you. Again, and it was mentioned also by others, and I didn't see the other presentations before, but please read the call text thoroughly. Try to understand it. Try to understand what's expected to you. It's, if you're an evaluator ever do one of the reviews, it's also the first thing the Commission sends you. It's the call text. Okay, so you have to familiarize yourself with the call text as an evaluator. If you hand in a proposal, it's good to follow the same logic and to make sure that you are common ground on this. Another point is also understand the correct type of action. And many of them will be what is called research and innovation actions, and maybe some of them are coordination and support actions. There are differences. When you like research and when you do research primarily, the research and innovation actions are the right tool. So if you have an innovation action and your focus is primarily on research, that might actually not be the best thing, because you will be more assessed on the impact side, and also your research will be assessed not on how groundbreaking novel it is, but for example, how certain technology readiness levels are improved. And coordination and support actions are again a different set, a different type of actions that require a different approach. The criteria, excellence, impact, and dissemination are the same, but the way this is assessed and what is good excellence, what is good impact, and what is good dissemination might differ between the various types of actions. So make sure you understand this difference also. Make sure you clearly address each criterion and its sub-criteria. And I can tell you most of the evaluation reports will be structured by paragraphs, and the paragraphs will try to assess each of these sub-criteria that are defined in this assessment forms. So make sure you address them and you provide relevant information on how your project fulfills these sub-criteria. The last thing I think that I have is try to help the evaluators to navigate through your proposal easily and structure it according to the template given, provide the information in a easy to comprehend form. It helps evaluators to better understand descriptive proposals with a lot of text, sometimes fonts, so this is a very small, make it for evaluators sometimes difficult to find the information they are really looking for. And so follow the template structure for part A and especially for part P of your proposal, and try to address the specific questions there. I think the guidance given by the Commission is quite good. Use it. So what I want to say at the end, good luck for your application. I hope you will apply for your Horizon Europe projects, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Johannes. That is really very comprehensive and really encouraging. I just was thinking, you know, when you were talking about how important it is to help the evaluators actually read the proposal. What many people do, they actually use the bold font to drive the attention to the keywords, right? So it's so much easier to see, oh, this is the place where they discuss this criterion or this keyword. And it's also a psychological mechanism, because then you just like the proposal really better, you know, because you understand that the people wanted to make it easier for you, isn't it?
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, in some of the calls, you get a lot of proposals to review in a short period of time. And sometimes many of the reviewers have normal work tasks on the side. So it really helps if you can find the key information in a structured way. And it's a benefit to the applicants, because if something is missed, and I mentioned it, it's so many sub-points that you need to address. And if you miss a sub-point, you might get down, your scores might go down by 0.5. That's the minimum. So you have 0.5 incremental steps. And 0.5 will be most likely the difference between funding and not funding.
Exactly. So much. We are very late, but we still have a program there. So I will ask now to the stage the representatives of the project. We will talk a little bit about how the real life researchers go about the Horizon project and how they collaborate in a consortium. So I will invite to the stage two researchers. So Jens Greinert from GeoMar Helmholtz Center for Ocean and Research, and Jacek Bełdowski from the Polish Academy of Science. We will have a very easy-going discussion, really, because I asked both professors to actually share their experiences. I am putting now into the chat the link to the project we will be discussing. I hope you can see that there will be different projects, but we are basically focusing on one. So I will start with Jens. Could you talk to us a little bit, very shortly, about the project we have on the table before us?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. So thank you very much actually for inviting me, and it's my pleasure to present the Minesweeper project. And the Minesweeper project does what it means. Yeah, so we sweep mines. Actually, we do not actually sweep mines, but we investigate technologies to make the remediation of old munition. So we are not talking about munition that is used currently during the wars. It's the old munition that has been dumped after the First and Second World War and other wars in the ocean. So they are they are a threat to the environment. They are a threat for safety. They are also a threat for the security. And for quite some years, Jacek and others in Europe are studying these munition old remnants. And we figured out that they are really also an impact on the environment. And this is what we do at GEOMA. So we are not a mine-sweeping research institute. So we are more or less doing environmental science, climate science, and other things. And we have a lot of this munition in front of our door here in Kiel. So I'm at Kiel at the Baltic Sea, and Jacek also, of course, Poland also at the Baltic Sea. And yeah, this was a little bit of an endeavor to write this proposal. It's a big proposal. There are now 22 partners and has roughly 6 million euro budget in total. And it took us some time to gather the ideas. We want to gather the ideas to approach the objectives and the questions and the outcomes, the expectations of the call. And I can only support what has been said before. Ideally, you copy and paste what the EU wants in your proposal and you answer it one by one. This is a good thing. And do not do anything new. Do what they ask, and ideally do everything that they ask, or be smart and say, okay, we leave this part out, but nevertheless you address this part. So actually it's a quite structured way. It's a little bit strange with all the administration, but it's actually at the end of the day, writing the proposal is quite structured. They give you nice templates and you just do what they ask you to do. Okay, so that's a little bit of the introduction.
Yes, how much? So I understand that both of you have, and it's very, common, I would say, in Europe, both the project coordinator experience and the partnering experience, right? So you can actually talk about the two sides of the coin. You know each other, I understand. I would like to know what inspired you to collaborate on this project together, and how did that collaboration came about? And I will ask both of you to answer very briefly.
Okay, so maybe I can start and then Jacek can continue. So actually GEOMA is coordinating this proposal or this project now. And I was asked by a Norwegian person who saw this call at a very early stage, and he approached us because we do a lot of munition related research. And he said some of our projects, previous projects, were actually mentioned in the call. And then he said, okay, who's the guy potentially behind these calls? And then he sent me an email, and I was not actually aware of the proposal at that time, whether we should do something jointly together. And I thought, oh, that's a nice call. We definitely should do something. And I started thinking. And then I contacted Jacek because I thought he will definitely be a very good partner to support the ideas and the objectives that we have. And that's how we, at least from my side, how we moved on with that.
So Jacek, tell me why you decided to be a partner, because you could be also a coordinator, right? You could be a competitor, but you were not.
Yeah, well, it all comes to the flavor of the proposal. It was mostly technological. And in terms of munitions, it's geophysics and it's good cooperation with the industry. And the GEOMA does that perfectly. So I saw the call. I contacted my partners from the other projects, and they were all interested. But we decided that we would rather cooperate with somebody strong in technology than start ourselves. And when Jens contacted me, I already was familiar with his projects. He'd done a number of great munition projects from national German funding and was also present in international projects. So I decided to join and also recommended some of my partners from other projects for specific tasks. So then I'm doing what I'm an expert in, and I am skipping the coordination part, which is also good because coordination is an effort by itself. So if you have a good partner who can take on himself the coordination and he's got a strong idea, it's better to go with this than produce a weaker proposal.
Yeah, and this is actually for me also a very important message, right? That you always have to look at the topic and think, am I really the best one to lead on this? Maybe I will be better off as a partner supporting someone who has a better profile, right? That this is what it is. So I wanted to ask Jens about this coordination part. I wanted to know, do you get any support at your university and at your institution? Weren't you scared? How does it
Yeah.
work?
No, GEOMA, so we are roughly, so it's a governmental funded research institute or research center. We are roughly 1,000 people and we do a lot of EU projects. And we have a very good, strong, knowledgeable team who helps us, particularly with the administrative side and the finance side. So they are very good in filling these online forms in and dealing afterwards with the grant agreement and also with the consortium agreement. So that's a legal part that has to come afterwards once the project has been granted. So we have support there. If you don't have this, it is a very steep learning curve. And you should not try this in your first EU project. You should first be partner in a number of projects to see how it goes. And if you then decide, no, this is something where we are so strong and we have administration who know a lot about the EU administrative things, then you can do this. But as a coordinator, you are the coordinator. So you are the head and you have to bring the troops together and nag them that they supply you with text during the time of the proposal writing. And it was also mentioned, you need some iterative loops. And there are two ways of writing proposals. So there's one way where one person has a super idea, he knows what he wants to do, and he handpicks the partners. Yeah, so this is a really top-down decision. This is good because you don't have to argue with other partners, what do we do? Yeah, this is sometimes not what the EU wants. The EU sometimes want to bring people together and they jointly develop the program. You can do the second as well, but it takes way more time. But it's also very rewarding because you meet people that you don't know before. So there are pros and cons on both sides. Yeah. So typically smaller consortia, there's one head and he says, I know this person, I can do this. I ask them, we write a good proposal. They know each other, straightforward. In Minesweeper, we did the other approach, yeah, which is why it took us almost a year to come to a really conclusive proposal and write it and decide who is doing what and how many work packages. And this was really an iterative process. But during the time, we also learned what the others are doing. And I got a number of additional partners now that I didn't know before. So that's also rewarding.
Writing a proposal is also a form of networking. I would say it can be. So this is an important message that we have as well to everyone listening. Okay, I think that we have only a few minutes left. I just wanted to ask you then, what is your role, Jacek, now as a partner? I understand that you must be the work package leader. What is it that you do, actually?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I must be. That's the word. Yeah, well, if you are a partner in the consortium, then if you're an expert, you have to be ready to be a work package leader. And even if I am participating in multiple work packages in Minesweeper, I'm leading my own. This is about compiling knowledge and preparing it for dissemination. So compiling all the materials which are produced by the projects to comprehensive webinars and workshops and publication materials. So I'm the outlet of the project, and that's what I'm coordinating. So for that, I need to monitor all the other work packages for the outputs and coordinate with them when everything will be ready, and also allocate my resources to prepare those outputs for publications. So those are the things I'm coordinating, because I've got a wide area of expertise, and I'm a geochemist, but I was a coordinator of multiple munition projects, so I know all the aspects. So that's why I was chosen as this victim to provide the outlets. But nevertheless, I'm also active in chemistry and geophysics and like a real scientific work. And it is more interesting for me, but maybe not so important for the project. It's a part of the job, but it's a minor part what I'm doing, whereas the coordination of the work package is a critical part. So unfortunately, I have to focus more on my work package leader responsibilities.
Actually, a very important work package, as we learned today. You know, I think that in every presentation it was underlined, you know, that the communication of results is really key. And this is where I asked the question to Jens. So we often hear that Horizon Europe is focused on Europe. Do you think that your project has impacts beyond Europe?
Yeah, but definitely. I mean, munition in the sea is not a German and not a European issue. That's also a Canadian issue, and that's an American issue, and that's a Pacific issue. So this is a global thing. And we also have a scientific advisory board, and there we have people from America actually in there. And Minesweeper, we particularly set it up like this, that we can still invite cooperators as associated members to the project. So we just did this with another company. Rheinmetall is a big German military company. So they are now partner because they also do munition remediation. They not only build munition, they also remediate munition afterwards. I think this has definitely a global aspect, and at least in Europe, what we are doing has been recognized by the European Union, also by all the 27 member states, that this is apparently an important topic. And I know that Europe wants to put more money into this. And then the idea is that this knowledge, because we want to develop remediation technologies, is spreading out worldwide, globally, so that others can use it and don't start from scratch again.
So much. I think that we will finish here. So it was also a call to anyone interested in maybe sharing their skills with Jens and Jacek to contact them. We'll have their contact details in the materials we will send in 1 week. Thank you. And now I will ask our last speaker, Tamara Sone, who is the national coordinator for all the national contact points in Canada, and who is joining us from ICET. Good morning still.
Yes, good morning still. Yes. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to participate in this program. I'm very honored to be part of this group, and it's been a fantastic presentation, as always. I don't know if you, Eddie, if you have my slides. If not, I can share them.
Yes, please do share.
Okay. Okay. Hold on 1 second. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So as you mentioned, I'm the National Contact Point Coordinator for Canada. I am the responsible for the Horizon Europe Secretariat, which is located at Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada. So we're the team responsible for helping Canadians navigate this complex program, but it's also a very exciting opportunity. So just want to let you know, we are part of a National Contact Points. The National Contact Points are the main critical structure to provide guidance, practical information, and assistance on participation in Horizon Europe. They're the subject matter experts in their field and have strong awareness of domestic and international expertise in their cluster. So the Canadian NCPs, as you can see, we have a wide range of NCPs. For Cluster 3, we have Barry Dubrun, but we also have a new one as well. So Samantha Hogue, who is also, she's also our Arctic NCP. So that's part of, she's brand new. So we're going to be adding her name. Her name is already on our website. So if you want to go to our website, we have a dedicated webpage to Horizon Europe. If you have any questions, please go to our Horizon Europe contact, which is Horizon Europe at -isa.gc.ca. If you have a general question about that, or if you want to be on our newsletter, please sign up there or on our website. Our website is being updated regularly, and you can find contact information for Samantha Hogue as well as Barry Dubrun there. And if you have any additional questions related to Horizon Europe, and especially for Canadians, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Tamara. That was very efficient, as always. And I think that we are getting to the end of our meetings today. So please, everyone, be reminded that we will be sending to you the presentations with the contact points as well. So you will receive all the emails of all the people who participated today, who spoke today. And I will ask now Sara Pinheiro Lozano from the delegation of the European Union to Canada to close this meeting.
Thank you very much, Agnieszka, and thanks very much to Tamara and to our experts and speakers for joining us today. It has been really a great run for these past 6 webinars on Horizon Europe. We have been very happy about the number of participants that we have seen joining these past webinars. We are very happy that we have been able to contribute to the dissemination of this very important program for the EU here in Canada. And as our ambassador said, please stay tuned. Please continue to look for news on future activities, as we will certainly have and organize future activities on Horizon Europe and really contribute to the expansion of this program and the collaboration between European and Canadian researchers here in Canada. So we're really hopeful that we can see each other again. So thanks again very much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you and goodbye.